This is a recording of a talk I gave at a symposium at the Merz Akademie in Germany. The symposium was about video essays and was called Creating Insights. Get it? Because it's visual. I always appreciate a pun. My talk was called Diary, Discourse and Demonetisation and was specifically about making video essays on YouTube. I'd never done anything like this before, but I think it went okay, and, it's a free bonus video. And you'll be returned to your regularly scheduled programming next week, hopefully.
You definitely get a lot of her presence just from her voice and her video essays, which I've came to discover last year on her YouTube channel. What's so great about that? And it's really one of my favorite YouTube video essay channels. And the way that I try to make sense of them, there are many interesting genres on YouTube. Some of you may know mukbang, which is the genre where you watch someone eating for half an hour, and it's very pleasurable to do that somehow. Speed runs, in which you're watching someone playing a video game for 2 hours, and that's really somehow very entertaining and pleasurable because you're seeing someone master the video game and just make all these decisions and maneuvers in just split seconds. And so you feel like you are mastering the video game by watching it through them. And so I like to think of Grace Lee's video essays as a kind of video essay speed runs. They are very much kind of like watching the performance of someone exercising their intellect, their research abilities, their ability to process a wealth of film and media information, to combine it with theory and text, and just create a video essay that just really demonstrates a phenomenal talent in navigating through all of this. So it is sort of like video essay speedruns or playthroughs in a way. I mean, they're just really, really impressive. So today she's going to present about a video essay she produced just 2 months ago around Halloween season about what she finds so special and singular about the horror film genre. And she's going to talk a bit about her process in making the video essays, some of the new things she tried out with this particular assignment, and also how she engages with an audience on YouTube. Because I think that this afternoon session is really moving into these questions of audience engagement, of community, who we see ourselves making these video essays for, and to what kind of social end, not just for aesthetic understanding and discovery, but also for creating social relationships. So with that, it's my pleasure to invite Grace Lee to present. Thank you.
Gonna get into it. Oh, what do I do? Okay, so as I make videos on YouTube, I'm going to talk about what it means to make videos on a platform like YouTube, especially in relation to this boundary between the academic and the personal. To give kind of the origin story for that video, I've been thinking about my relationship to the horror genre for a long time, because to say that I like horror would be an understatement. But I'd never found a why people like horror argument that really reflected my experience. And then on the 31st of March this year, I saw a discussion on Twitter about assessing media objectively, in which this tweet was made about the objectively best square. This was in response to people explaining that you can't really judge media or art objectively because it depends on what metrics and criteria. And it became a running joke in the online circles that I'm in. The objectively best online circles that I'm in. And that got me thinking that I wanted to talk about subjectivity subjectively, because YouTube thrives on subjectivity and on personal exploration and individual connection. And I realized making this video that I use the video essay process as essentially a kind of diary, a way of working through my life and my own thoughts via the media that I consume. Like in this video, I cropped all of the footage to be the same aspect ratio as I often do in videos, but it's not something I do if the specific films themselves were the focus of the essay. But here they're not really appearing as themselves. They're more just an illustration of my own abstract thoughts. And I think putting them into this one uniform container is like my way of taking control of them and making everything about me. And I think if this is essentially a kind of public diary, then where better to host it than YouTube, which made, a platform that made its name from vlogging. And it's a platform that explicitly encourages subjectivity and the personal. And I like being able to switch between academic language and colloquial language and being able to interrupt academic language with something like slang or something more humorous, mostly because I find that juxtaposition funny. And while YouTube welcomes personality and humor and a more conversational style of presentation, you don't get so much of the academic stuff. But for me, academic text has always had a place alongside the personal and the artistic in this kind of scrapbook approach that I have to video making. This is like a little time lapse of some of the research process for this video. Basically, anything that I see or read has the potential to be drawn into a video. And I like to use the original text, like the original printed format, as much as I can. I think if you steal something from the source, then you can do more with it. Like this passage that was from Sartre, I used because it illustrated the point I was trying to make, but also just because I found it funny. And I think the humor that comes from this in the video is mostly down to the visual manipulation of that original text rather than just recreating it. It just highlights this weird intensity that was already there. So sometimes I end up using academic text, but in a way that isn't necessarily entirely academic. But then I also try and use text in ways that aren't transformative. Like this is a scan from a newspaper article. This is a scan of Noel Carroll's essay, The Nature of Horror. And then this screen grab of the Facebook message that I sent Shannon Strucci to ask them about their video on Neil Breen. I never really know where I'm going when I start the essays, so it's a process of exploration and gradual understanding. And I think depicting the original text in this way visually reflects that research process in the video, just like gathering all of these disparate things. But while YouTube is the home of the public diary, it's still a strange transition to go from talking to myself to talking to an audience. Because audience and community are big parts of what it generally means to make videos on YouTube. Like even that section that Shannon did for my video, which I wanted to include something like that because that section of the video was about connection and dialogue with other people, but that kind of collaboration is an existing tradition on YouTube where YouTubers will appear in each other's videos. There's like a whole ecosystem of connected YouTubers and connected audiences that feeds into this sense of community. And Shannon Strucci actually has a video series on this called Fake Friends, which is about parasocial relationships on the internet, which are these one-sided relationships between the person who makes something and the people who consume it. And I bring that video up because there was a comment from a viewer on that video that demonstrated this strange community effect that these interactions can have. Because in Shannon's video as well, lots of online personalities did voiceover for that video, much like Shannon was in my video. And this viewer pointed out that it has this sense of that being like a friend group, and then they wanted to join the friend group. And I think that's what YouTube wants. Because this is a newsletter email that I got from YouTube just a month ago, or less than a month ago, about channel memberships, which is where viewers can donate money to a creator on a monthly basis to get extra features, much like Patreon. But what struck me was this emphasis on deeper connections. A lot of YouTube's official newsletters and advice use this kind of language that's effectively encouraging creators to develop those parasocial relationships with their audience, to make viewers emotionally invested in the people they're watching, to feel like they're friends. And you deepen connections by making things personal. So while I'm more detached from this parasocial phenomenon than a lot of video makers on YouTube are, it's something I was really aware of when I was making this essay on horror, that more and more of myself is creeping into my videos, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, and I don't think it's a bad thing, and it's actually something I want to explore and experiment with more. But I always want to be asking the question of how much is this a decision that I'm making, and how much is this a decision that YouTube is making for me? Because the platform has a way of nudging you in certain directions. Earlier this year, I went to see Robert Eggers' film, The Lighthouse. This is still about YouTube, bear with me. And it struck me that sailors, historically, more than any other profession, were so bound by superstition. And I was wondering, why is that? And it's probably because they're at the mercy of an uncontrollable and unpredictable sea. And then I thought that YouTubers are like the sailors of the internet, because our existence is also tumultuous and guided by forces beyond our control. And so it's also guided by rumor and superstition, because it's hard to talk about making work on YouTube without talking about the algorithm. Always in the singular. I think calling it the algorithm gives it this aura of an entity, an enemy, and troublingly a god. And it is godlike in how it functions. It entirely determines what videos get shown to people and how many people will watch your video. For this video, 88% of impressions, which is every time someone sees this thumbnail for the video, regardless of whether or not they click on it. 88% of this video's exposure essentially came from YouTube recommending my content. That's the algorithm. And regarding that recommendation, I was careful with what clips I chose to put in this video, because when you're showing horror films, it's difficult to do that without depicting some questionable imagery. And if the algorithm picks up on anything that it thinks might be controversial, like gore in this case, it's like, no, none of that. Demonetized. And being demonetized, as you would hear a lot about in the YouTube world, just means that YouTube won't run ads at the start of your video. So you can't make any money on it in that way, which is fine. I don't care about that. I tend not to make that much money from ads on my videos. But the rumor is that if YouTube thinks, or if the algorithm thinks there's something in your video worthy of demonetization, something that isn't suitable for most advertisers, it's therefore not suitable for all audiences. And it won't show it to all audiences and will, in cases, suppress your video. There is some evidence for that, but it's not confirmed. Much rumor and superstition in the YouTuber world. But because the algorithm is shrouded in secrecy, similar to what Charlie was saying about TikTok and teens on the TikTok teens working out that you can hashtag a film that's being promoted and therefore game the algorithm to get more promotion. YouTube are very familiar with that kind of tactic, and so really lock down what the algorithm is looking for in terms of promotion. No one knows what the algorithm wants. It's all hearsay. But it means you don't know how many people are going to see a video when you post it, because the algorithm doesn't just suppress things, it also promotes things. And I get, on average, between 10 and 20,000 views on a video, but then sometimes this happens, and I get a lot more views than that. And I did nothing knowingly to make that happen. That's the algorithm. And these aren't even particularly like large numbers as far as YouTube goes. There are video essayists who get millions of views on a video. But it's just this strange situation where you're not working in one space, that, you know, one moment you can be making something for yourself or for what you think is a small, specific, predetermined audience. And then suddenly there are all these people here, and something that I was making to, you know, understand something myself becomes entertainment. Something that was intended to be inward-looking or that was created as inward-looking becomes entirely outward-facing. And it's led me to consider how my videos function as entertainment, because increasingly I do want to make them entertaining, because it's a challenge to make them entertaining, and challenges are always exciting. But it comes back to that question of, is this a decision that I'm making, or is this a decision that YouTube is nudging me to make? Because while no one knows what the algorithm wants, I have a pretty good idea of what YouTube wants, which is essentially more, infinite growth, maximum engagement, these happy green arrows all the time, always doing better than last month, which is obviously not sustainable. You can only go so high before you have to come back down again. But the platform just has this way of pulling on you and always demanding more, not just longer videos or, fast-paced, high-energy delivery, but it's like it wants all of me. And I'm aware that's fairly melodramatic, and as YouTubers are a melodramatic bunch. It's great that the video essay can thrive on YouTube in this way, but what I was saying before about parasocial relationships that can develop around the creator-audience dynamic, it's not, well, I'd say it's not a bug of the platform, it's a feature, and it's something that YouTube relies on to drive engagement and to drive interaction. Because if someone's invested in you and in your channel, then they're more likely to keep watching. And YouTube just wants people to keep watching. It's literally their entire business model. And again, it's interesting with what Chloe was saying about whether or not you appear in your videos, because while in the academic world, that's not common, it's definitely common on YouTube. And when I talk to other YouTubers who do video essays or even who do other things, and the topic of filming usually comes up, and I say, I don't appear in my videos. And it always seems to be a surprise to them, because it's like it goes against this core idea of what a YouTuber is, and that YouTube was set up as a way to broadcast yourself. And while I'm not the only one, by any means, who doesn't appear in their videos on YouTube, but we're definitely a minority. And because with academic video essays, it's fairly common to be voiceoverless, let alone to not appear in them, to use the democratizing impersonal voice of text, or even to not use text at all and to only use images, two things that I think Catherine Grant's videos do to a really great effect. But that doesn't happen really on YouTube, because YouTube is all about the person behind the videos. And it doesn't just want your voice, it wants your face, it wants your life, it wants every detail which is there to be documented, consumed, and monetized. And that's a level of assimilation that I'm not really comfortable with. I don't want to be that public. It's maybe why I hide behind other people's words and other people's images. So it's a strange situation working in that way. And particularly with what I'm doing right now, because I don't know what the thought process is behind someone getting up in front of an audience and having a microphone and then trying to say, don't look at me. But I think that's actually also why YouTube is such an interesting space for me to make work in that it is adversarial in that way, that I feel like I'm always walking this line that I'm trying not to cross. And maybe I've sounded very negative about YouTube, and I don't mean to. I just find this side of it to be really interesting to talk about, because it's great that, to have this kind of reach. Terrifying, but also amazing. If you want to share something with people, there isn't really a better place to do it. And I don't think the negative, like the positive and the negative aspects of YouTube can be separated. The things that I think are negative, the things that I find problematic about the platform, are the same things that make it exciting. So it's like they're two sides of the same coin. And I'm really interested in the idea of connection and in connecting things and connecting people. It's really what that video on horror was entirely about. And it was explored by connecting text and images and myself, and even started from Twitter, which is a social network. So I guess it's only fitting that it should return to one. Thank you.